Alright, so today's lesson is on identifying angles. So we're going to talk about a few angles first. The first type of angle we're going to talk about is a complementary angles, and that is two angles whose sum is 90 degrees. And we know that a 90-degree angle is also known as a right angle. So we're going to have that right angle symbol there. Okay. Now when we draw a right angle, or when we split a right angle, we can split it anywhere we want to have two complementary angles. So we can go very low right there to have a small and a large one, or we can go high to have a small one on top and large one on the bottom, or you can go right down the middle. As long as those two angles combined equal 90 degrees, they're known as complementary. Alright, next one is supplementary. Two angles whose sum is 180 degrees. And from previous lessons we know that 180 degree angle is known as a straight angle, or considered a line. So anywhere you want to split that straight angle or that line is going to give you your two angles that add up to be 180 degrees. Third one is vertical angles. It's two angles that are opposite each other. When two lines cross, they share the same vertex. So what I'm going to do first is it's two angles that are opposite each other when two lines cross. So we're going to go ahead and draw two lines. We're going to have them cross kind of however we want. Okay. So there's my two lines that have crossed. And they are the two opposite angles. So if I do angle 1, 2, 3, 4. If I think about angle 1, the opposite angle of it, 2 is right next to it, 4 is right next to it, but 3 is opposite of it. It's on the other side. So angle 1 and angle 3 are equal. Then if I look at angle 2, we have angle 1 and angle 3 are next to it, but angle 4 is opposite of it. So that is my vertical angle. Those are always equal to each other. And the last one is adjacent angles. These are two angles who share a vertex in one ray. So adjacent angles are also right next to each other. That's the key word. We'll say next to each other. And if we look at our previous examples here, complementary angles are adjacent. They are next to each other. Supplementary angles are adjacent. They are right next to each other. Vertical angles are not adjacent angles because they're across from each other. They're opposite, but you can say that angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent, angle 4 and angle 3 are adjacent, 2 and 3 are adjacent, and 1 and 4 are adjacent. Okay. Let's go ahead now and take those and look at a few examples here. Okay. So our first example A, we have a 25-degree angle and a 65-degree angle. We know that those are complementary because they add up to 90 degrees. They're not supplementary because they're only 90 degrees, not 180. They're not vertical because they're not opposite, but they are adjacent because they are right next to each other. We look at angle B here. You can see that we have a straight angle here, and that's a good sign that we're going to have a supplementary angle. They are not opposite of each other, so it's not vertical, but they are next to each other because that makes them adjacent. So we'll put B down there as well. Alright, C. We do see here a straight line there, and we have a line that intersects it, so we know that these two angles, this one and this one, can be considered supplementary. They add up to be 180 degrees. We also see that there's some opposite angles. So if I put, let's do number 1 here, 2, 3, 4, we can see that 1 and 3 are opposite of each other, which makes them vertical, as well as 2 and 4 opposite of each other. And then we also see angles that are adjacent to each other. 3 and 4 are adjacent, 2 and 3, 1 and 2, 1 and 4. Those are all adjacent or next to each other. And lastly, we have angle D here. Looks very similar to angle or image A. So we have a right angle. There's our symbol there, and we have two angles that are next to each other. So they are adjacent, but those two angles that are next to each other also make up 90 degrees. So there is complementary there. So those are just some different examples of how to identify those. What I'd like you to go ahead and do now and pause your video. I want you to try the examples here below. When you're trying these examples below, you'll notice that there are letters here: A, G, B, A, G, C, A, G, D. I want you to use those three letters when you're identifying it. So if you want to talk about the angle AGB, you need to actually write angle AGB. Okay? Your G is always going to be in the middle here. It's always going to be your middle letter for any angle you do. That is your vertex. Okay? So go ahead and fill in where you see complementary, supplementary, vertical, and adjacent angles. And now that you've done that, we've got some to go over here for you. Found some complementary ones. We have AGB and BGC. So AGB, BGC, they make up that right angle. Another one we saw was FGE and then EGD. They make up the right angle over here. For supplementary, we found that there's FGB, BGC. So FGB and then BGC. Notice how they make a 180 degrees here. There's FGC makes up that straight angle, and then the two angles split it. And there's some other examples there. You can look at those. There's also more here. There's not just the 3 options. There's more than that you could have found. And then we have our vertical angles. It's our opposite angles. So one example was AGB, AGB, and at the opposite would be EGD. So we'll put a little star there and a little star here. Notice how those are opposite. A couple more that were found were BGC, BGC. We'll put just a squiggle line there. We'll put a squiggle line over here, the opposite one. Okay. And then we also said FJA and DGC. And you probably could have found out some more from that as well. And then lastly is adjacent, so any angles that are next to each other. Again, making sure that they are right next to each other is the key to that one. And we have some examples, and there's obviously going to be more than that on this picture.